Over to you. Right.
Morena councillors, Morena members of the public, welcome to the first Infrastructure Customer Services Committee meeting for this triennium. Just a reminder that we're recording this meeting. This meeting has been held here in the supper room of the Waihinga Centre, the Martinborough Town Hall. It has been live streamed and will be available on the council's YouTube channel to view after the meeting. Just a reminder for health and safety, the emergency exits for this room are the door that you came in at the front of the building, and also the exit behind me into the car park out onto Cork Street. If we do need to evacuate the building, please use one of the exits and assemble outside the playground, and please remain in the assembly area until the building has been confirmed there. Now I would like to invite Deputy Mayor Councillor Melissa Sadler-Footer to open the meeting with karakia.
Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa ponamu te moana, hei huarahi ma tātou aitirangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ai a tātou katoa. May peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all today. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together.
Sure. Thank you. Now, move on to apologies. I've just had a call from Councillor Gray, who is delayed. However, she will be here hopefully in 10 minutes or so. I also have an apology from Councillor Bosley, who is unable to attend today during as he is unwell. Can I have a councillor please who will move to accept the apologies from? Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Puma. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say no. That motion is carried. Thank you. Conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare from anyone around the table? No conflicts of interest and nil. Right, no conflicts of interest, nil registered. Thank you very much. There is no public participation that we're aware of. And therefore no actions from public participation. Is there any extraordinary business that anyone wishes to bring to the table? Thank you. No extraordinary business. Now we come to item B in the agenda, decision reports from the Chief Executive and staff.
Chair, why do we not have minutes from the previous?
There was no, this is the first meeting of this committee.
Yeah, but the business of council continues, doesn't it? So
all of the minutes at the end of the triennium are signed off by the CE.
okay, so but how does this committee sort of know where we're up to in terms of
It's a new committee.
if we don't have a continuance?
If they're available on our website.
But for the new council, I think what Councillor Plum is trying to say is that for the new council to understand, you know, was there an actions item list that things were being moved across, or?
That's what we're discussing after the actions list.
Oh, right.
I know, but it strikes me as very strange that there's not
in here.
you know, the business of council doesn't stop at the end of one triennium and start anew. It continues. And whilst it might be different people around the table, actually having those minutes at our first meetings of the end of the last triennium is actually a pretty important point, so that everybody around the table knows where we're starting from.
Yeah, and if the new council, if the new committees cross over two different things, well, we can have both of those things, but that way, you know, we're all on the same page. And I just think that without having I just think it's I'm also a little bit confused that why there isn't even, yes, they are on the council webpage, but there's nothing that actually says for any of the councillors who are sitting here on this one, which committees they should have been looking at to see where that was at that final stage prior to coming in, if it's not going to be provided here. So, just so that way, I'm just confused.
We can easily circulate, but the purpose for having the minutes on the agenda is actually to make sure they're a true and accurate record of the meeting.
Well, that's the other thing we need to discuss is actually minutes are a record of the previous meeting, absolutely. But then there are also matters that arise from those minutes in the intervening period. And that's one of the things that certainly Martin and I have spoken about is why we don't have matters arising from the minutes as an agenda item. Because, we're talking a month apart. So things may well have developed
2 months.
in a 2 month period and say, well, we decided that, but since then we've had storms and so on and so forth. So there is a matter that have arisen from a minute because Tim's budget might have been blown out or all sorts of things might occur. So matters arising to me is a really critical point to actually have in minutes, I think. And I'm certainly interested to see what others think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd absolutely endorse that. I mean, the role of looking at the minutes is partly an accountability check that the things we decided or resolved have actually happened. And we need to be assured that our decisions, in fact, have been put into action. And there may be various ways to do that. But I think what Councillor Plymouth says is the conventional way in this country that we run meetings. And I would strongly recommend to the governance team that as A1 to A6 at the moment, what would you say? They are they're items on every agenda that we also need an item to follow up what happened at the previous meeting as per the minutes.
They're online. We can pull them up now. If you
Sorry?
want. They're online.
Oh yeah, no. We if I may, yeah, we're all aware that they're online, but because it's not an agenda item, we're not really in a position unless we declare an extraordinary business item, which doesn't seem altogether sensible. We're not actually getting the opportunity just to monitor that the things. I agree, it's the previous council, and it's the CEO's job to make sure what is recorded is accurate, but it's our job to make sure that what was agreed has been done.
Shall we, to move this conversation forward, shall we attach the minutes to the next meeting?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
But they'll be the minutes from this meeting, right? Not the minutes
I
from
know.
previous.
So what I'm suggesting is we attach the minutes from the previous council.
Assessing
meeting,
services.
assessing services meeting. And there will also be the minutes from this meeting as well. So there'll be 2 sets of minutes provided at the next council meeting.
And at that point, Amy, will there be an A7 or another item that's, matters
It's
arise?
always on the agenda.
But just not in this case because of the standard.
I mean, matters arising have never been on the agenda.
Oh, matters arising. Sorry, I thought you were still on that.
And it's just, I suppose, if we use the Christmas period as an example, from the last assets and services thing, when we looked at the state of the roads and so on, we hadn't had all the storms, we hadn't had the cyclone come through. And so, Tim may well come here and say, things have changed since we made recommendations in the last meeting. We need to be able to be quick enough to adapt, and particularly now that we've given delegations to this committee to do certain things, that becomes even more important that we actually review the decisions that were made previously and any changes that might have occurred in the interim.
Councillor Woodcock, have you got comments or any ideas or discussions?
I agree with what Alice said. Actually, it would be very.
There might be times where there is nothing arising, and that's fine, but we need to have that opportunity to have that conversation.
Following on from your point that you've just made, Councillor Plummer, once we have finished our discussion about the Martinborough Square lighting, has anybody got an objection to perhaps around this table asking the roading manager, Tim, to give us an update on the state of the roads that have, the state of the roading state that has occurred over the Christmas New Year period.
What do you?
I think that's probably a little bit unfair on our staff to sort of throw that in there without any warning. I think maybe going forward that they come prepared to that. I think we've got to.
Yeah.
Well, at a time already.
Yeah.
With all due respect, I'm not wanting to throw them under. I just felt that might be a valuable, a valuable insight, and briefly and quickly.
Maybe offline. Maybe offline.
Okay. Okay, there'll be something else we can add. Thank you. So back to agenda item decision reports from Chief Executive on the lighting in the Martinborough Square. Do I have a mover to receive the lighting in Martinborough Memorial Square report?
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Sadler-Footer. All those in favour of receiving the report, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, please say no. The motion is carried. Thank you. I'll just go back a step. I'd just like to welcome Councillor Gray to the table after her delayed arrival. Do we have to note the time?
Okay.
Oh, thank you very much. Mr. Wilson, would you like anything to add to the report?
I invite James and Tim to the table. Would you like a summary of the report or questions of clarification? Or
Well, if James and Tim can come to the table, then have we got and then perhaps councillors who have questions.
James, do you have any comments you would like to make regarding the report? I was going to take it as read and then just run people through the summary of the options. Yep.
Thank you.
So yeah, take it as read. As you see, I guess to give a bit of short context for the executive summary, it's all around inadequate lighting in Memorial Square in Martinborough, raised regularly by the Martinborough Community Board, and the subject of the occasional public inquiry in the past as well. Key concern around that is the assertion that the lack of lighting at the pedestrian crossings in the square constitutes a danger to public safety. So that's the driver behind that. Is running in parallel to that, but separate from the pedestrian crossings, the existing lighting in the square is partially inoperative. We've got some work underway at the moment investigating that to look for solutions, understanding what the problems are, and costing appropriately as well. As reported to Council in February 2022, many of the pedestrian crossings in the South Wairakei region are not compliant with current regulations, including the lack of lighting. So in addition, we considered the options, the 4 options that you see before you there. Option 1 being the preferred is to install the pedestrian lighting on all non-compliant crossings in the South Wairakei district, beginning with the Martinborough pedestrian crossings and a phased approach. The lighting in the square could be, if we talk about all the crossings around there, could be funded through the Infrastructure Reserve Fund. It's worth noting that there is no subsidy on that, so that's 100% cost to council on that, allowing for work to commence in the FY of 23-24. So if the council see urgency with that, then we can proceed with that option. Option 2, installing a standalone lights in the square, potentially solar, as I think an option was talked about. Option 3, including all the pedestrian lights and the land transport funding request to Waikakotahi. And from a fiscal point of view, that will allow us a 51% subsidy on all the lighting versus dipping into the Infrastructure Reserve Fund. And option 4 is to wait until the investigative work that we're doing in the square is complete and seeing what sort of impact that has on lighting around the square before making decisions. Option 1 is the preferred option in the paper. I just wanted to also lead you to section section 7, which talks around consultation. We believe that there's no formal consultation needed with this work. However, there would be quite a lot of engagement that would take place with the work that needs to proceed with that. There's a detail in that section around why we've suggested that no consultation is required. Reiterating that we would certainly be engaging. So we're open to discussion and questions.
Thanks for that briefing. James, I'm certainly keen, and I know that the Martin Borough community is certainly keen to progress this project. The discussion about investigating the wiring network that's currently underground in the square, that's been a long ongoing project, which I think Bryce, your predecessor, had kicked off, and there's certainly mention about seats and lighting that have already been purchased and awaiting those repairs. However, I think that I feel that this project for the lighting of pedestrian crossings needs to progress and can't wait for that investigation work to occur. With regards to bringing some priority, I'm just wondering as to whether we can perhaps make an addition to the option 1, which you're recommending, and that's we include that council officers to produce a costed project plan for work as soon as possible. And I'm wondering if that's feasible to obtain by the 1st of March, including the solar options, which had been talked about previously, and just to ensure that all options, whether it's the fixed standard street lamps or the solar options, all comply with the Australian standard, New Zealand standard for pedestrian lighting. I think you recorded what that standard was in the report. Is any other comments from any other councillors?
Yes. At our December meeting, we noted that the lighting in the Martinborough Square is a matter that needs to be dealt with urgently. And the council is well aware of the health and safety issues that arise with the status quo. When I look at the 4 options, I only see one of them that appears to be in any way urgent. I see 3 issues which look like, let's wait. If you also recall back to that came to the December meeting, we actually had a very well described solution. I mean, there were architectural drawings right there. Some of the costings had even been done right there. A lot of the work that normally we would have to do, it's already been done. It's ready to go. I am surprised that urgent doesn't appear to mean that we've already started work, to be blunt. Now, I'll go further and say that I think the condition of lights elsewhere in the district, since they are to be addressed in any way, it's clearly going to be something that waits until the annual plan, because I think we're talking a lot of money. In fact, I will recall a conversation I had with Stefan around lighting in the square using conventional means that would likely cost the council $600,000. The proposal that came to us at the last meeting cost $30,000. So I think people who are looking at this meeting, who've read all of the material in front of us, must be surely wondering what's the holdup. And I think we've got matters a little bit confused here. If I take in the report that you've provided, if I take the pedestrian crossings in Greytown, for example, one of which is outside the primary school. Now, the lighthouse of the pedestrian crossing outside the primary school has got two of those orange circles. I don't know what they are referred to as. But it's got two of them. It's got a street light pretty much directly above the pedestrian crossing. It's got two speed bumps either side of the pedestrian crossing. You know, it's not a pedestrian crossing that I've ever heard anybody have any concerns about. And if it doesn't meet the standard in some way, it must surely be a fairly minor issue, I would have thought. And I'll tell you something else too. The primary school will have told us if they had any concerns, because that's what they do. So I'm not saying that this isn't something that should be on the list somewhere, but I just cannot see how it's going to be a priority for spending our money when I look at the state of some other infrastructure, such as the drainage outside the supermarket in Vincent. So that's my views. I think we should proceed with the option that gets the lighting into the square before somebody is injured.
So the information that has been supplied by Martha Borough Community Board member who had done a whole lot of costings and done some investigations and options, that has been supplied to Stefan and James and the team. There was another member of the Martin Borough community who had provided costings and ideas as well. That's been supplied to the team, as well as the emails that have been sent in by residents, Martin Borough residents, to elected members with their near-miss concerns. So collectively, there's a lot of information that's been supplied already. Councillor Maynard.
I'm just another thing is with this one, the ones that they have been put in Martinborough, it makes no mention of the Broadway Kitchener crossing, which was where we heard that there had been a near miss as well, which was reported at our previous meeting. What's the way that all the children come across from one side of town to get to school, leading straight down there. And I understand what Kotahi was doing some work, was looking at doing some work on the Kitchener Street, and I had raised this as, could this be looked at being another raised pedestrian crossing? Can what Kotahi, when they're already looking at doing roading works prior to this, like look at that crossing urgently, so that way it's not missed. If they're going to be doing work and then have to come back, that's additional costings, which we shouldn't, you know, shouldn't have to do twice. So I'm not quite sure what happened with that request that I'd put through and raised. And it's not even on here when we know that that's another concern. It was one of the ones, wasn't it, that was non-compliant, is that right? But it's not on this list.
There's definitely one that was spoken about at the last meeting.
That order only covered local roads, as opposed to state highways.
As opposed to the state highways.
And in this report's based on lighting, school kids don't generally cross the crossings in the hours of darkness. There's the hours of daylight. So I think we're off the beaten track a little bit. We're looking at two different issues.
With the Kitchener Street crossing, is it still about pedestrian crossings or?
Lighting.
And lighting, I mean, it's still a concern as well with the.
Absolutely, but the paper's referring to lighting as opposed to the other improvements around
Pedestrian crossings. So this is just about lighting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Plummer.
Yeah, guys, can you just give an update of where we are with the cabling? And obviously that's reasonably critical to this whole conversation, because if we're going to lights and we need power, so solar is one option, but we've got power in the square already.
It's not necessarily critical. Like I said, there are two pieces of work that are really running in parallel. Whether we can tap into that cabling in the square, it's yet to be determined. We've yet to get fully gripped up the problems and therefore the solutions to the lighting specific to the square. So we're talking the pole lighting, the arc lights and things like that. It just so happens that I guess in some ways it almost confuses the discussion a bit, because we are talking about lighting at pedestrian crossings. We may or may not be able to tap into that infrastructure that's inside the square. Once, as one of the options talks about here, once that lighting in the square is functioning again, we can get a good read on. So does that have any impact on the pedestrian crossings or not? Yeah.
Okay, well, having said Having said that, then I would consider this paper as incomplete because, you know, we're just been narrowed down to a very small solution here as opposed to what is the total solution for the square, because I don't see these as separate issues. Power is power. And if we're going to go to an expense of getting a solar powered system, okay, that's separate, but that we've got no costings on that to fit here. And also my next question, and then the next question is lighting in the square, which has also been raised about safety in the square at night and so on and so forth. So they are actually linked. And if we're going to spend money, why don't we do it once and do it right, as opposed to cherry pick the solution, which will end up ultimately costing us more.
And with all due respect, I disagree with you saying that it's incomplete. This is talking about pedestrian lighting and also making reference to the lighting in the square. And I'll reiterate again that we don't know yet, we tap into that power. How those lights are powered is relevant, but it's not a key driver in this paper. We're talking about the solutions around, let's get something sorted over those pedestrian crossings. And in parallel, yes, we have some work happening in the square. So I disagree with you there.
Well, you've actually said in paragraph 4, a contributing factor is the fact that half the existing lighting in the grass area is working due to what's an underground fault. So it is a critical issue to this whole component. If you're going to talk about underground cabling, then it's an issue. So my question would be, let's get some proper costings as to options as to what sort of lighting. Obviously, lighting is the end result here, but actually how we go about the lighting is determined on the costing about what we're going to do. And if it's going to be linked into fixing the wiring and fixing the other visibility in the square, then let's actually get those figures, because I don't want to say, yes, go and spend $30,000, $50,000, $200,000 without actually having a complete picture. And I don't think we've got a complete picture.
Sorry, Eric. Mia Conley.
A question through you, Chair. My understanding is that the lighting in the square is sort of decorative, oldie-fashioned type lighting. It wouldn't even illuminate the pedestrian crossing.
Oh, yeah. It's in the square, it's not around the pedestrian crossing.
But it's the
So even if they were
there.
going, it has nothing to do with the lighting on the pedestrian crossings because it's in the square.
Except that it can provide power to those lights.
That's the
And-
only
and-
thing.
and
It's not going to
that's the link.
provide additional lighting
Potentially, yeah.
to the.
And until we get the answer, is it whether it can.
Thanks for that, team. We'll go to see Harry.
Just so option 1 is to get on with it and produce a cost and project plan for the work. So, Councillor Plummer, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And Aidan was making a suggestion that resolution, that recommendation be amended to be specific about including solar power as well. So it covers that issue around is there a short-term solution that we can do with solar power? But that is intended to get on with the work. Full stop.
I've got no problems with that, but I don't want to be led down a particular path that says we'll do a short-term solution, which will cost us more in the long term.
I don't believe that. Oh, sorry, Harry. That it is a short-term solution. It's an immediate, urgent solution to resolve the problem, with the view that if the solar street lighting on the pedestrian crossings works, well then I would be happy to see that rolled out to other pedestrian crossings around the district. If it's a cost effective, it's a safety effective option for the council and the communities. Councillor.
Sorry, James, could I get a better understanding of the timeline for that sort of investigative work that's happening with the cabling? Because I know it's sort of starting now or has just started, but it was a little bit unclear on how long the projected timeline for kind of having a result for that would be.
Yeah, so the investigation work, as pointed out here, began on the 18th of January. It has actually concluded. I don't have the report yet that tells me the minutiae of the problem and therefore the costs to consider. And therefore, what are we actually doing? Are we completely digging up parts of the square and resource consents required, or is it refitting lights in there? Obviously with dark sky compliance and things that's to consider as well. That's the detail that I don't have from that report, but the actual investigation work, physical work, has been completed.
And when do you expect that report to be with you?
next couple of weeks.
Councillor Gray, do you have anything to add?
Me.
Councillor,
But gosh, we look alike today.
sorry, I'm just trying to include everyone and go around the table. Councillor Maynard,
I'm just wondering because we've got the rough estimate of 500,000. Where did that come from if there's been no work onto financials? Where's this number come from? Because I mean, it's a big number that's being put out into the public, so.
I would think it's just an estimate based on local prices gained, recent work done, and multiply it by the number of lights required and poles.
And this is for the whole district though, isn't it? This isn't just for the work around the square, so the immediate work. And this also hasn't looked into, so this is just the 500,000 if we were going to go down the electrical way and not solar. Is that right?
Oh, I mean, there's not much difference between the cost of units, solar and electrical. The cost is in the pole structure and the cell on top is the minimal cost. That additional cost, the cell, will be sort of counteracted by the lack of need to trench and cable. So
That's where I thought there would have been quite a large cost with the cable and everything digging up, needing to dig up and everything. That's where I thought there was actually quite a large cost that would go through compared to being above ground.
well, the power source is already in the square, so if you're going to recable the loop around the square, the cost is only a matter of laying the cable at a very shallow depth, so not an excessive cost. Because you'll be in the grass, so you're really saying it's not a full part of the house. It's just a matter
It's good
of
to-
grass drop.
It's good to know, so that's another cheap option.
however, tied alongside that, there'll be the requirement
lights.
for a resource consent as well. So,
And putting in the lights, right?
James, because
Yeah,
fencing inside.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just picking up on your point earlier, Aidan, around that option and all the information that we have around solar and work that's been done by various people in the past, that is all in the mix, so we are looking at what's the most fit for purpose, meets compliance regulations and everything like that. And is obviously the most financially viable solution as well. So we don't know yet in here whether it is solar or not, or powered, the design of the light, various things like that. They would, will be brought into consideration when we're talking about more detailed costings and project planning.
Councillor Wilcott.
Sorry, I emailed out the other day I would prefer if you're doing the work, to put new cables in the ground there. If that's the case, then utilise the time of doing that, put the cables for the lights at the same time. The one concern about solar, especially in the winter, I priced up to do something similar at home for automatic gates and was told the trees too close to proximity, even that solar could run my gates. So with all the trees in the square, whether or not to get away from that fact, you may have to put taller poles, which may cost more or be more of an eyesore, especially on the southern and eastern sides, to get enough ton to run them. I'd like to make sure that that's all looked into before solar was actually confirmed as an option.
Okay, so we've gone around and gathered a fair bit of information and received ideas and thoughts from everyone around the table. I'm just wondering if we can now go and perhaps circle back to those options. And James, you said that you haven't received the report for that investigation work. Would it be possible if we amended our option one recommendations that by including solar options into that report that you're going to do, but also include that investigative report, so that therefore we know what the state of play is with the underground network, and that can be included into the project plan. And would that be possible to be ready and supplied to members of our committee by the 1st of March.
That report, so the report specific to the square, would have that in the next couple of weeks. In terms of a full project planner and a pedestrian crossing, I need to consult with Tim on that, see whether we can get it at 1st of March.
Okay. Councillor.
Just on the options as well, surely option 3 there, we should be doing that as a matter of course anyway. We should be applying to Kotahi for the other ones just in time for our long-term plan anyway. So I'm assuming you put that into your planning.
Yes.
Be applying for, so.
Yeah, because if the other ones are getting pushed out to 2024, 2027, it's, yeah, surely that's all part of that process. Yeah.
So we discuss and then vote on
So
each individual option. Yeah.
So I can just clarify, Mr. Chair, so we're adding some wording to the second recommendation.
Yes.
At the end of the sentence, at the final sentence, where council offers to produce a costed project plan, including, I suggest we include the findings from the investigative report. And say for the work as soon as possible, including solar options.
By 1st of March,
By the 1st of March.
want to include the date.
Tim, is that?
I haven't got capacity at the moment.
So the first,
What would be a date?
would for Martinborough, for the square, would the 1st of March be feasible, and then and then the options for the pedestrian crossings around the rest of the district coming after that?
I think I just got no spare capacity at the moment doing due to the floods and emergency work and going other stuff, so we have to outsource that work.
If we outsource the work, what would be a date that we had to get that project plan?
We could outsource it with timeline of 1st of March. Whether you get any interest is another issue.
Since we're only talking about lighting and we're not talking about affecting the road network, what is it that would take up Mr. Langley's time, please?
Everything else that's going on the roading network.
So,
Sorry.
just clarify that. What do you? Sorry, can you just clarify what you said?
Okay, we're talking about lighting.
Yeah,
we're not talking about roading. I understood Mr. Langley was our roading manager. I'm not quite sure why we would need to take any of his time or resources.
Oh, right. You're thinking it should be somebody else within staff.
I would have thought so.
So the issue is to make sure that the lighting itself is compliant with and its land transport standards for lighting for a pedestrian crossing, which is exactly the role that Tim has within council. So Tim looks after our roading network, our pedestrian crossings, our footpaths. So I mean, the main issue is to make sure it's compliant.
Waka Kotahi has no regulations on this issue. All they have is advice.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think that is relevant. It's easy to read. We can all see it.
As mentioned in the report, the lights go into Australian and New Zealand standards, and that covers locational lights, illumination, various other things. So, and I think the key part of that is on the internal side of the square, you got to look at the impact of the trees on illumination of the lights. So it's not just a standard thing. You got to look at do your trees need pruning back to accommodate.
But it's not a roading issue either.
No, it's not.
That's right.
I totally respect and understand workload capacity. I'm just cautious and curious to what sort of cost outsourcing this piece of work would incur. Obviously, we want urgency and we want things to move, but I don't think any of us want to add further unnecessary cost either. Is there any indication of that?
Tim, it'll be
Which would it normally be?
an idea of what the costing could be.
I maybe 15 grand.
Ouch.
Is thinking outside the square. So is that,
No pun intended.
didn't even think of that. Is that with a consultant or an engineer doing that work, Tim?
Yeah, we use lighting people to look at our audits for us and do audits, so it's just a matter of tapping one of them on the shoulder, see what their capacity is like.
Would there be people within our community that could assist and help council to do that work? So we can move this along and expedite it?
It may well be, I won't discount that, may well be.
Because there was a member of the Martin Borough Community Board that had done investigation and pricings and spoke to suppliers prior to the last council meeting in December, and James and Stefan have got those options. Could we progress with that member of the community board to get things moving along?
Well, I suppose we can ask them, but
I mean, Mr. Chair,
the whole point of getting proper designs and consultants involved is the life really there. As you mentioned, the report's based on safety, so you need to get it spot on and right. So engaging someone in that field is probably the best option.
Right.
We're not even at a point though where we have a confirmed option, like we're really still in the investigative phase though, aren't we?
Can I just?
Can I, sorry.
1, 2, 3.
I just, shared services with Rimahanga Roads with Carterton, is there someone that has the same expertise with regards to do that investigation that may be able to help? Because we've already got shared services with Carterton as well. If Tim's under the pump and might not be able, and I know it's not, I know it's across the district, Tim, so, I really appreciate that and understand how busy you guys are. But I'm just wondering if there was someone else that we might be able to shoulder check that we have available, who may be able to help to meet that 1 March deadline. I mean, we've got a shared.
It's a field of expertise which none of the councils in the Wairarapa can afford to carry because it's such a minor activity. So you'd outsource it.
So it would be outsourced anyway, asking you to, you'd need to outsource.
Oh,
Then that's what we should have.
we try and understand it, but
Yeah.
so within the budget that's allocated here, can that be absorbed?
Point of order. The second person was like,
My apologies.
on the.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think we're losing a bit of focus here. Our job as a committee is to set, the governance and say, this is what we want to achieve. Go and find the solutions. We're now starting to delve into the solutions. That's not our job. Our job is to say, Tim, go forth. Here's the money. Go forth and come back to us with your suggestion. We're starting to get into areas that is not our responsibility and not our expertise. And I just think we need to just raise it up to the level that our staff need us to guide them on.
Thanks, Councillor Plummer. Mayor Connolly.
Exactly endorse what Councillor Plummer just said. We are the governance body. We want a report by the 1st of March. How it happens is not actually our business at that stage. I think it's pretty clear what we're looking for. I don't think it needs any more debate personally.
So if we add the date, sorry.
Sure.
If we add the date to the amendment to the last sentence, say by the 1st of March.
So instead of as soon as possible. Is that what you're amending?
Uh,
Council officers to produce a costed projected plan for the work by 1st of March,
yeah,
Including solar options,
including.
including some.
including the investigative report.
Yeah.
Because if it's been completed, we might be able to chase it, you know, they might be able to get it to you within
Who would like to,
2 weeks.
Yeah, I'll propose
who
that.
would like to move that? Councillor Plummer, who would, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Gray, thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say no. Thank you. The motion is carried. Now we go to 3. Now, point number 3, resolve to recommend to council that implementation of pedestrian lighting in the Martinborough Square is completed without public consultation on the basis that the current pedestrian lighting is a risk to public safety and is not compliant with current requirements. Does there need to be any discussion, or would there like to be any discussion about that, or should we just?
Can that be amended a little bit, because we know that actually it was put out onto all of the Facebook pages, and we have actually received information that, you know, so from the public, from quite a significant number of the public, when you're comparing, if you're comparing apples with apples and you have 9 people and that was enough to be able to get something done around the square for painting it, and compared to, you know, what, 100, 120, you know, responses. I just think saying that we're not going out to the public is kind of trying to skew the issue like we're going over them, but that's not the case. It's been brought to us by the public, and yeah, I don't know if there's any way that you know, but that without, you know, that the reason we have already done, you know, there has been investigation on that side.
Can we change public to further? Get rid of public and just put further.
Yeah, I think, did you want to?
Public consultation has a definitive, a very specific
That's why we
requirement.
haven't done it, but we actually have. We've
Well, we haven't, not technically.
not without
Excuse me, guys, excuse me, take it.
So consultation has a very specific meaning, as you will know. So that means that you'll approach this with an open mind, and if the public come back and say, don't do this, and yet we're resolving to actually get on with it. So there's an engagement plan that would go with this to talk to the community about it. But just to resolve Pip's concern, I think he would easily add just a sentence to the 3rd resolution, noting the high level of public feedback and desire to have this issue resolved.
People's thoughts on that?
And can you just read the whole thing back again, please, with the change, just to ensure that it's making sense?
Please.
Yeah. So resolved to recommend to council that implementation of pedestrian lighting in the Martinborough Square is completed without public consultation on the basis that the current pedestrian lighting is a risk to public safety and is not compliant with current requirements, noting the high level of public feedback and the desire to have the issue resolved.
That,
People's thoughts about that?
oh,
You happy?
Happy, Councillor Plummer?
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Councillor Walcott? Councillor Gray?
I'm happy if the Martinborough councillors are happy.
Who would like to move that amendment to that resolution? Is that right? Or who
Just
would,
move the resolution.
okay. Should we just, yeah, who would like to move that? Councillor Maynard, who would like to second? Councillor Gray, thank you very much. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. All against, please say no. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. And point number 4, resolve to recommend to council to identify that the decision not to consult is inconsistent with Martinborough Square Management Plan, and that this requirements of the management plan will be reviewed as part of the global review of all council reserve management plans. Is there any discussion, councillor Maynard?
I just have some concerns about this because this is the management plan that the previous Martin Borough Community Board was waiting for the last triennium to see, to get all of the information from this. So while it's not, it is inconsistent with the, I think there needs to be the date there of the fact that this was the Martin Borough Square Management Plan 2011.
Yes.
So just so people are aware that this is actually from the old one that hasn't been afforded the opportunity to actually look at and update it.
Or been reviewed since
Yes.
2000.
2012,
Mm.
what it says on the document.
Okay,
Yeah, one of them was 11, one was 12, wasn't it?
yes, I do.
Yep.
Any other comments on that? Do we have someone who could move, who would like to move?
Aye.
Mayor Conley, do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Maynard, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against, please say no. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Now, there is a further item which has not been added to the agenda. But there has been discussion amongst some about the terms of reference, and just like to discuss terms of reference for our committee and recommend that the following changes be made to support decision making and processes and progression of future works. And discussion.
We're linking it into the discussion around how much you can approve. So like, for example, this particular paper. So it's not a new item, it's just coming out of the discussion of your paper.
So the discussion is about terms of reference and the powers to act and the powers to recommend. Now, the terms of reference submitted at the council meeting on the 14th of December read that our delegated authority and power to act and approve an unbudgeted expenditure from reserve funds and emergency expenditure of up to a maximum of 400,000, and then approve activities and unbudgeted expenditure up to 100,000 outside the annual plan that did not trigger the significance and engagement policy or other legislative requirements. I know that we discussed this at our previous meeting. However, there is thoughts and concerns that this delegated authority would restrict the committee from making decisions and slowing decision-making processes down, where projects such as this, which could go over 100,000 or $400,000, would then be required to go to a full council meeting for discussion and approval. There's certainly been thoughts and feelings that that to expedite the process, our committee should be having a greater delegation to progress and move actions going forward. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, so just coming back to this, keeping the delegations with terms of reference active conversation. So you have before you an example of a decision that if you consider that this should be the delegation to the be delegated to this committee to make the decision and then report the decision to council. In this situation, because of that change to the terms of reference, it means this decision has to go to the full council to be only making a recommendation. So the question is do you want to revisit that and make a recommendation to council to be able to say that this committee is able to commit unbudgeted expenditure from reserves? So that was the bit that was amended as opposed to the emergency stuff. So it's just a discussion about whether we can avoid that, you know, the original intention was to try and get the decisions, one-stop shop for the decisions. And so that's completely within the, your decision making, whether you want to ask that question of council to change the terms of reference to allow a decision such as this to be made.
Councillor Plummer.
I've been comfortable with that. We had a very long discussion in council about the delegations and the monetary things, and I remember we specifically looked at the monetary issue. And that's why Colin actually said, well, I want to be on that because I'm not reluctant, you know, I'm reluctant to allow such a level of delegation with, and yet be held responsible for it, even though I'm not on the committee. So that's why Colin is now on this committee. And I think there were some others that put their hand up for that same reason. So I'd be reluctant to make a recommendation here. And if we want to review this, I think it should go back and the mayor should actually be leading this particular issue because it's a delegations issue and maybe it should be a council meeting, not a committee meeting discussion.
Councillor Maynard.
Another thought on that as well. If there comes a time where there is something that's coming to this committee, is there a way, because I'm looking around, there's seven of us from the council out of 10. So the reality is, I mean, is there a way that we can actually have them? Because even though they may not vote, they can still have their say here and be here. So it would be, rather than holding an extraordinary meeting, being able to actually have them available, the other three, and anyone that wants to. So, I mean, that's another way that it could be looked at for the decision to be made here if this meeting is before the council one. If that needed to happen, I'm not sure, but.
Interestingly, my original plan would have been to do exactly what Councillor Plummer just suggested. It turns out that because of some amendments we made at the December meeting, some of the terms of reference don't actually make sense any longer. Because, for example, sometimes they refer to a committee which is not a committee any longer. So there needs to be a review. And the question was, should we take it directly to council shortly, or should we give the committees just the chance to have a talk about, are we happy with what we've got in view of some of the changes? I think Councillor Maynard's point is, however, a very good point. Single option back up. I mean, I think Councillor Old's point, which we all agreed with, because in the end we agreed with it, was, you know, what is the limit? And I think Councillor Maynard has made the suggestion, well, actually, you could have two limits. You could have the committee by majority, of course, voting to this level, but it would require a 2/3 majority or at least 6 votes to go to that level. So I think that's something we can come back to full council. And but just before we do it, has anybody taken a look through the terms of reference, the levels of delegation, and thought, oh, doesn't make sense yet? I think the one we're talking about here came up almost instantly after we'd made the decision. So it was sort of a topical event.
So certainly the discussion that I'd had with Stefan about this report was that, and the reason he has included not only the lighting in Martinborough Square, but the lighting for the whole district into this report is because he was wanting to expedite the decision-making process so that there was one decision made by this committee, not only for the Martinborough Square lights, but the pedestrian crossings for the other communities in our district, rather than having to have 3 different meetings, 3 different papers, 3 different groups.
I think, I'm a fan of this report that Stefan has written, because I think it's good to write one report for the whole district. And I like the priority is obviously on Martinborough, but the other 2 issues they're not urgent. They're not a requirement that this committee needs to make a decision on. They are annual plan and long-term plan issues. And whilst the staff can well go ahead with the planning, but we've already indicated, go to Waka seek the funding there as well, and so on. So it's not an urgent thing that this committee needs to deal with. It's a long-term plan or an annual plan issue, and then the requirement for us to say yes to it will be gone, because we'll have actually consulted the public, and it'll be an approved issue if it goes that way. So it's not an urgent thing.
So the question is, do you just want, sorry, let me just get my thoughts. The question is, do you want to include a recommendation to council specifically to amend the terms of reference to give this committee delegation to approve unbudgeted expenditure from reserves for a certain camp? If you don't want to, it's absolutely fine. This is what we're trying to bring to life the ability for the council to make the appropriate committees to make decisions under delegation, as opposed to go to a two-stop shop. And this will occur. We've indicated that we will try and keep this conversation alive, so to make sure that where possible, we're making sure that the committees are getting the right level of responsibility and accountability. So it's really within your, or the alternative is, as Martin make a point to review the full delegations in terms of reference as other things pop up, so you can do it more comprehensively. So we're just guided by your thoughts.
I'm sort of a little bit reluctant to go down that straight of unbudgeted money in the council here, because money is tight, as we know, and we've got an annual plan, and we've actually said this is what we're going to spend our money on. And unless it's an emergency, I don't see that we need to deviate from that. And yes, if council staff come to us and say this is really important and we missed it, that's a different story. But this is a routine matter that can be dealt with as part of our routine planning. And I would be really reluctant to sort of break that door open a little bit and say, you know, where does it end? And at the end of the day, we are still accountable to the public for implementing the annual plan and the long-term plan. If we deviate from that without a really good reason, then we're in trouble. And that little thing that you're talking about there, Harry, I think that opens the door a little bit, and I'm not sure I really want to go there.
Just to clarify completely in my own mind. Presently, in an emergency situation, we can approve up to $400,000 worth of action. And I tend to agree, if it's outside of an emergency, then there is further conversation with our colleagues and planning that possibly should have happened or needs to happen. Yeah, I think if I wasn't on this committee and my colleagues were making really high value decisions like that, I'd feel uncomfortable about it.
So you expect them to trust you more than you'll trust them.
Just saying, if we're going to up the level, it starts to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing it. Just leave it.
Yeah, we can always come back and revisit it after months. You know.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Do it in 6 months' time when you review all the terms of references. Other things are going to pop up without any doubt.
I guarantee you,
we keep the conversation alive.
We have not got it right yet, and I guarantee you by the end of 3 years, we still won't have got it right. But, you know, incremental improvement.
We'll have it there.
Can I just ask, Harry, has there been times in the past where you as CEO have seen that it would have been beneficial for the infrastructure committee to have higher delegation powers?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why we changed the run for emergency works. Because my current, and when we do the delegations, the CEO should have a higher delegation. I only had $20,000. And so, you know, it's Friday and the flooding everywhere, and we're pulling out sucker trucks and all those kind of things. I can guarantee it's going to be over $20,000 before we start. So, you know, the agility to respond to emergency works is really important. So, yeah, even my current delegation, I don't think is adequate to actually
that raises a really interesting point, though, about the size of this committee. It is too big for an emergency discussion. And, you know, when we were talking right at the start, sort of perhaps 5 councillors on, and then everybody said, oh, I want to be on that, I want to be on that, because of the dollar value involved and the very point you made. That's why this committee now has 3/4 of the council on it. But that means it's no longer agile, because you need a quorum, and the bigger the committee, the bigger the quorum. And so it's not as agile as it should be. And maybe that's something else that maybe we might want to have a look at.
Councillor Woolcock.
Exactly what I've been thinking, exactly what Alistair said, that everything takes too long, the big committee. Personally, I think the committee should be smaller. Make sure it's over half the council maybe. When those delegations come, it has to be unanimous or it goes to council. And that way, if it went to council, if it's unanimous, it would have gone through anyway. Get my drift? If you've got more than half the council, one more than half the council, say 5 people, whatever, and 5 will vote, then it would have gone through a council anyway.
You just look at how difficult it is to corral everybody for the 9th of February meeting. It's difficult because it's such a big committee, and so it's unwieldy and it's not going to achieve what Harry needs to achieve and what we want
To lead,
Sorry.
are you volunteering to lead?
So, for you, Mr. Chair, so I'd like, it's good discussion and thank you. So I think people are happy just to leave the delegations where they sit. Yeah.
Thanks for your input, everyone. Now I will now move to the chair's report. Okay. So I'll just briefly, you've all seen a copy of.
Sorry, you do have a recommendation to receive.
Okay, I'd like to, there's a recommendation, I'd like to move that we received, I can move that we received my chair report. I'd like to move that this committee receives the chair report. Could I please have a seconder? Councillor Sadler put it. All those. You just know that Councillor Woodcock has left the room. We need to, can we still, I suppose we can, but all those in favour of receiving the chair's report, please say aye. Aye. All those against receiving the chair's report, please say no. That motion has been passed. Thank you very much, Lee. So you could, you've no doubt perused it. I'd just briefly like to say welcome to everybody for this first meeting of our training. As you've seen there, I will be co-chairing the report with our Deputy Mayor, as there will be times when I may not be available, and there may be issues or matters which are topical to the customer service side of our committee and our discussions. The next point there, January updates. We're all aware that we had Cyclone Hale come through, but thankfully we're not impacted as severely as other parts of the country. I know that the council staff, the roading contractors, subcontractors all work pretty hard to open up.
Amazing.
And did an amazing job. And I'd just like to put it out there that Mayor Connolly on Monday morning went up to the Fulton Hogan yard at Marston and supplied breakfast, pies, I don't know if it was sausage rolls.
Oh, breakfast.
To the Fulton Hogan crew and Tim as a thank you from the South Wairarapa District for the hard work that they've put into.
Chief Executive.
We never got that at all, Phils, did we?
Sorry, I missed. So the Chief Executive and Mayor Connolly thank the Fulton Hogan staff with breakfast on Monday morning. So that was absolutely great. Thanks. And of all that hard work that they had opened, kept our roads or opened them up after they were closed. So yeah, I'd like to thank our rural residents, our council staff contractors for the efforts that they had made last month to keep our roads open for our local families, businesses and tourists alike. And then the final point there that I've made is, and I've had a brief discussion with CE Harry about this, and that's, and I suppose it's of notice to me because of where I'm living, and that's I've see a lot of the council contractors and their subcontractors travelling backwards and forwards. So I'm just wondering about if we're able to see whether some efficiencies could be made with the machinery going backwards and forwards from work sites back to the yards and Marston every day. And Harry has said to me that after all these incidents, there will be a lessons learned process going through after the fact.
Is there a way? I don't know. Is there a way that perhaps if this council has somewhere where they may be able to leave it, you know, that can be, that, do we have somewhere secure? That where it might be able to be left if it was, you know, if the work is being done out rurally, where they might only have to bring it to Martinborough rather than bringing it to Masterton. You know, the gear, I'm assuming that the reason that they take them back every single day, all the way back from wherever they're needing to do the work every day, must be a security issue. That's the only reason I can understand that they would be taking it. Would that be correct?
Tim would be able to comment.
Quite often we do park up at Martinborough Transport.
So
It is a secure hard stand area because just after the week where the plant has to be cleaned and washed every day. Restart checks, health and safety requirements, all that needs to be done on ground, which can be done on. And also just we do park the graders out in the district on a regular basis. And probably monthly, at least monthly, vandalised. Batteries taken, windows stolen, windows broken, fuel tampered with, sand and crack put into the fuel tank, so it makes it unusable for
Is a significant.
yeah.
So as part of that, rather than, could we have discussions with farmers or property owners in those areas to see as to whether it's feasible to park, you know, whether it's the grader or other machinery on private land off the road?
The graders down are still vulnerable.
Right, even on properties, right?
But
the key of this is we want to do a full lessons learned. What are the things we can do really well? What are the things that we need to get better to respond to these situations? And this is just one of the many things that we need to think about is the proximity of the gear to do it. And in particular, I wasn't aware, but Tim said that we do use half stands.
I think it's
In Martinborough.
yeah.
So it's one of the things that's really put in the mix.
So it is being done, but it's not normal. It doesn't necessarily mean it's cost effective.
Well, it happens probably no guarantee to access that plant next day. But it stops from flood, so it's counteracted.
Yeah.
And thanks, Tim. And one other point here that I just skipped over before, I'd just like to put it out there that during this last event, council had initiated an emergency planning process with council staff based on a model I became aware of when I was policing, which is referred to as SIMS, which is combined emergency management or scheme.
Incident management.
Incident management. And they stood that up with dedicated council staff within the organisation to oversee and keep an eye on the issues that we could have faced within our district. Thankfully, we did not face any major issues, but the fact that that process was stood up, I think it's going to hold us in good stead going into the future if and when we get a major event, whether it's what Marsden District Council faced out of Homewood or Tanui, Gisborne District Council or even Auckland City Council faced. So it was great to when Harry advised me that had occurred, just staff working away in the background, keeping their ear to the ground, gathering information, planning and thinking about resources and worst case scenarios. So that was good work, thanks. Thank you. So that's about all of my chair report. Are there any questions from councillors on my chair report?
Just one comment, thank you, Chair. As well as the mince pies to the people in Masterton, I also rang and spoke with the Chief Executive of Fulton Hogan to say thank you for what his teams here have done. And I don't know whether anything will come out of that or not, but he did say that he'd like to come out and meet the council the next time he's in this part of the world. So it may or may not for a useful purpose, but
I think it's always,
relationships are always good.
it's always useful to have face-to-face conversations to build those relationships rather than just having phone calls or email conversations. Great. Thanks very much. Is anyone else, would anyone else like to add anything, or should we declare this meeting closed? I will, could I have that list, please? And I will.
Back.
I will attempt the closing karakia. Kia whakaaira te tapu, kia wātia e te ara, kia tō ruku whakatahi ia, kia turu kia whakataha ia, haumai e hui e
Ai
take.
kia.
Restrictions are moved aside, so the pathways are clear to return to everyday activities. Thanks very much for this what closed this meeting. Uranium.
Well done.
Team.
Well done.